For 24 years, my life was not my own. It was a stage upon which my mother, a woman of terrifying beauty and insatiable vanity, performed her endless one-woman show. My name is Emma, and for the last 6 years of my adult life, I have been trapped in a psychological thriller where every romantic partner I introduced to my family became a target. You see, my mother, whom we shall call Patricia, does not view me as a daughter. She views me as competition, a younger, less refined version of herself that must be put in check. Every boyfriend I brought through the front door was subjected to the treatment. It was a precise, surgical dismantling of my relationships, disguised as maternal warmth. It involved lingering embraces that lasted 5 seconds too long, breathless compliments about their physique, and the sudden appearance of cocktail dresses that were far too tight for a Tuesday night dinner. But 3 months ago, the script changed. I was exhausted from watching potential futures crumble into dust because my mother couldn't stomach the idea of a man choosing me over her. I concocted a plan that was equal parts brilliance and madness. I decided to introduce her to a man she couldn't break. I was going to introduce her to a fake boyfriend. To understand why I resorted to such drastic measures, you have to understand what happened with Tyler. Tyler was the catalyst. He was my most recent ex, a gentle soul with kind eyes who taught 3rd grade at the elementary school a few blocks from my apartment. He was genuine, soft-spoken, and completely unprepared for the hurricane that was Patricia. We had been together for 4 months, living in that sweet, golden haze of new love, when I finally gathered the courage to bring him to Sunday dinner. Patricia was 52, but she carried herself with the lethal confidence of a woman who had been a runway model in her 20s and refused to let the world forget it. She spent her mornings in a 3-hour ritual of hair and makeup, her afternoons with a personal trainer who cost more than my car payment, and her evenings curating a wardrobe that could fund a small country. When Tyler walked into the foyer, I saw the shift in her eyes instantly. It was a predatory dilation, a calculation of value. "Oh, Emma," she purred, stepping into his personal space with a fluidity that was almost impressive. "You left out the most important detail. You never told me he was devastatingly handsome." She pulled him into a hug, pressing herself against him in a way that made him stiffen, trapping him there while she smiled over his shoulder at me. Throughout dinner, the performance escalated. She ignored me almost entirely, focusing her high-beam intensity on Tyler. She asked about his students, his dreams, his fitness routine, laughing at his mild anecdotes as if he were a stand-up comedian. While I was in the kitchen slicing the apple pie, she leaned in close to him. "You know," she whispered, loud enough for the acoustics of the hallway to carry her voice to me. "Emma rarely brings men home. I was beginning to worry she'd never find anyone who could actually keep up with her. She settles, you see." When I returned with the dessert, Tyler looked like a deer caught in headlights, while Patricia looked like she had just fed on a fresh kill. She was glowing. After he left, the second phase of her routine began. She cornered me near the staircase, her expression shifting from seductress to critical judge. "He seems sweet, darling," she said, using the tone she reserved for disappointments. "Perhaps a bit simple for you? An elementary school teacher? I just think you need someone with a bit more fire, someone more like the men I used to date." This was the cycle. First, the flirtation to test her power. Second, the planting of doubt in my mind. Third, and most insidious, the private communication. She began texting Tyler. It started with innocent questions about family recipes, then shifted to suggestions for yoga classes he might like, and finally, invitations to coffee so they could discuss Emma's happiness. She positioned herself as a co-conspirator, a concerned mother. With my previous 3 boyfriends, this tactic had worked flawlessly. They became confused by the boundary crossing, overwhelmed by her intensity, and eventually they would ghost me rather than navigate the minefield of my mother's libido. But Tyler was different. 2 weeks after that dinner, as we sat on his couch watching a movie, he paused the television and turned to me, his face etched with concern. "Your mother has been messaging me," he said. "She says she wants to make sure I'm treating you right, but Emma, these texts are weird." He handed me his phone. I scrolled through the thread, my stomach turning into lead. It was a masterclass in manipulation. She was subtle, but the undertone was unmistakable. She was trying to build a secret intimacy with him. "I don't want to cause drama," Tyler said softly, "but this feels wrong." "It is wrong," I admitted, shame burning my cheeks. "I'm so sorry." "Has this happened before?" he asked. "Every time." 3 days later, Tyler ended things. "I care about you so much," he said, tears in his eyes. "But I can't handle her. The constant notifications, the way she looks at me, the things she implies about us, it's too much chaos for my life." I cried until my eyes were swollen shut, not just grieving the loss of a good man, but grieving the realization that I was destined to be alone as long as Patricia reigned supreme. That night, amidst the wreckage of my love life, the idea was born. I needed a shield. I needed a man who could walk through the fire of my mother's manipulation without getting burned. I needed someone who wouldn't be flattered, who wouldn't be intimidated, and most importantly, someone who would never, ever be interested in her. I thought of Alex Russo. Alex and I had been inseparable in college, 2 theater majors dreaming of big stages, before life drifted us apart. He was striking, tall with ink-black hair and eyes the color of sea glass, possessed of a smile that could convince a professor to change a failing grade to an A. He was also gay, a fact he had hidden during our college years, but celebrated openly now. I followed his life on social media, seeing photos of him and his fiancée, Marcus, renovating a loft downtown. Alex lived for drama. He thrived on chaos and had zero tolerance for bullies. I sent him a message that night, outlining the insanity of my situation. His response came within minutes. "Darling, this sounds like the best role of my career. Marcus is already making popcorn. When do we begin?" We met for coffee the following Saturday to construct our narrative. Alex was even more charismatic than I remembered, radiating a confident energy that I knew would drive Patricia insane. "What is the objective here?" he asked, sipping an espresso. "Are we going for a ceasefire, or are we going for scorched earth revenge?" "I just want her to leave my real life alone," I said. "If she focuses all her energy on trying to steal you, maybe she'll act out enough that we can expose her, or at least she'll be too busy to notice when I start dating for real." "Understood," Alex said, a mischievous glint in his eye. "I need to be charming enough to hook her, but unavailable enough to drive her mad. I will make her feel like she is in a competition she can win, if only she tries a little harder." We fabricated our history. We had reconnected through mutual friends. We had been dating for 2 months, and things were getting serious. Alex would be the perfect boyfriend, successful but humble, attentive to me but polite to her. The key, Alex explained, is to feed her narcissism just enough to get her comfortable, then starve it just enough to make her desperate. 2 weeks later, I brought the Trojan horse to dinner. Patricia opened the door wearing a dress that cost more than my tuition, her hair sculpted into a golden helmet of perfection. When her eyes landed on Alex, I physically saw her pupils expand. "You must be Alex," she breathed, extending a hand, wrist limp, expecting it to be kissed. "And you must be Patricia," Alex said, his voice dropping an octave, smooth as velvet. He took her hand, but shook it firmly, denying her the kiss. "Emma told me about you, but she failed to mention that her mother looks like she just stepped off a Vogue cover." Patricia practically melted into the floorboards. She giggled, a sound that was far too young for her throat, and ushered us into the living room. The game was afoot. Over dinner, Alex was a maestro. He asked her about her modeling days, listening with rapt attention as she recounted stories I had heard 1,000 times. He complimented the dry roast beef as if it were Michelin star cuisine. But every time she leaned in, he would lean back slightly, turning to me and placing a hand on my knee. "Emma is so lucky," he would say to her, "to have such a vibrant example of confidence in her life." "Oh, Emma has always been a shrinking violet," Patricia said, waving a hand dismissively at me. "I keep telling her she needs to put herself out there." "I think Emma is perfect," Alex countered, squeezing my hand. "But please, tell me more about that photographer in Milan." By the end of the night, Patricia was intoxicated, not by the wine, but by the attention. As I loaded the dishwasher, I heard them in the living room. Alex was asking about her skincare routine, telling her she looked a decade younger than her age. "She likes you," I whispered to Alex as we walked to his car. "She doesn't just like me, honey," Alex laughed. "She's already planning our wedding, or rather her wedding to me." The trap was set, and Patricia walked into it with her eyes wide open. In the weeks that followed, the texting began. It started innocently, articles she thought he would like, questions about his job. Alex showed me every single message, crafting replies that were polite but brief, keeping her hungry. "Hope you're having a great day, Patricia," he would write, ignoring her 3 paragraphs of flirtation. Then the dynamic shifted. Patricia started treating me with a bizarre, performative kindness. She stopped the passive-aggressive comments about my weight. She praised my career. "She's performing," Alex explained. "She wants me to see her as the benevolent, supportive matriarch. She thinks if she sees how wonderful she is, I'll realize I'm dating the wrong generation." It was working so well, I almost forgot it was a lie. But a narcissist cannot be contained forever. She began escalating. She started dropping by my apartment when she knew Alex would be there, bringing groceries I didn't need, always dressed in cocktail attire at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Your mother brought me homemade cookies," Alex told me one afternoon. "She stayed for 2 hours. She told me she worries you don't appreciate the finer things in life." "What did you say?" I told her I appreciate you. She looked like she swallowed a lemon. The breaking point arrived 6 weeks into the charade. My phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon.
It was Patricia, and she was sobbing. "Emma," she choked out, "I need to tell you something terrible. I think I'm falling in love with Alex." The world seemed to stop spinning. "Mom, what?" "I know it's forbidden," she wept. "I know he's yours, but I can't help my heart. He understands me, Emma. The way he looks at me, I think he feels it too. I think he's only staying with you because he's too noble to break your heart. Mom, you have known him for 6 weeks. Time is irrelevant when souls connect. I think we need to be adults about this. I think we need to sit down and discuss the future." I hung up and called Alex immediately. "She wants to have a feelings talk," I said, my voice trembling. "She thinks you're in love with her." "This is it," Alex said, and I could hear the excitement in his voice. "This is the checkmate. Invite her over. Tell her we will discuss everything honestly." Saturday evening arrived with the weight of a heavy storm. Patricia entered my apartment dressed as if she were attending the Oscars, a tight black dress, diamonds, hair in cascading waves. She brought a bottle of expensive wine and a nervous, manic energy. We sat in the living room, a triangle of tension. "So," Patricia began, her voice trembling with anticipation, "I think we all know why we are here." "We do," Alex said, his face solemn. He reached out and took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. Patricia watched the gesture with hungry eyes. "Patricia, I want to thank you for your honesty. It takes courage to admit feelings like that." "I didn't want to hurt anyone," she said, leaning forward. "But I couldn't live a lie anymore." "Neither can I," Alex said. "Patricia, you are an incredible woman. Beautiful, sophisticated, intense. Any man would be lucky to be the object of your attention." Patricia was beaming, practically glowing with victory. "But," Alex continued, his voice steady, "I am completely, utterly in love with Emma." Patricia's face fell, crumbling like a cliff face into the sea. "And more than that," Alex said, delivering the final blow, "I am gay." The silence that followed was so profound it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Patricia's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. "I'm sorry," she finally squeaked. "I'm gay, Patricia. I have been my entire life. I have a fiancé named Marcus. Emma and I have been pretending to date because she was terrified you would sabotage her relationship, just like you did with Tyler and the others before him." Patricia looked at me, then at Alex, her face cycling through confusion, shock, and finally a volcanic rage. This is a joke," she hissed. "It is not a joke," I said, finding my voice. "I asked him to help me because I was losing everyone I cared about to your interference."
"I thought if you were busy chasing him, you'd leave me alone." "You've been lying to me?" she screamed, standing up. "You humiliated me?" "You humiliated yourself, Patricia," Alex said, his voice hard now. "Do you think it is normal to compete with your daughter? Do you think it is healthy to text your daughter's boyfriend and send him photos?" "I was being friendly," she shrieked. "I never did anything inappropriate." "Friendly?" Alex laughed, pulling out his phone. "You sent me photos of yourself in a sports bra from yoga class. You told me Emma was settling. That is not friendly. That is predatory." He turned the screen toward her. The evidence was undeniable. Patricia stared at the messages, her face draining of color. Then the explosion happened. She threw the wine bottle against the wall, shattering it, red liquid dripping down the beige paint like blood. She screamed that we were ungrateful, that we were cruel, that she was the victim of a sick prank. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the pictures on the walls rattled. "Well," Alex said, looking at the wine stain, "that went better than expected." "She threw a bottle," I said, shaking. "Yes, but she knows that you know. The game is over." For 3 weeks, there was silence. It was the longest I had gone without speaking to my mother in years. I began to hope that the shock had reset her, that she had learned a lesson. But a narcissist never learns. They only rewrite history. My Aunt Linda called me. "Emma," she said, her voice tight, "your mother is telling everyone a very different story. She claims you brought home a gay man and tricked her into being friendly with him because you are jealous of her beauty. She says you orchestrated this to humiliate her because you can't stand that men find her attractive." I felt sick. She had twisted the narrative. She was painting herself as the victim of a cruel, jealous daughter. She was posting cryptic messages on Facebook about betrayal and ungrateful children, garnering sympathy from people who didn't know the truth. I called Alex in tears. "She's winning," I sobbed. "She turned it around." "Let her," Alex said. "Think about it, Emma. Let her tell that story." It took a day for the logic to click. My cousin Rachel called me. "Emma," she said slowly, "I've been thinking about your mom's story. If Alex is gay and you knew it, why would your mom be embarrassed about being friendly to him? The only way her story works, the only way she is a victim of a humiliating prank, is if she was hitting on him. If she was just being a nice mother-in-law, finding out he was gay would be a funny misunderstanding, not a tragedy."
The family started to do the math. The more Patricia insisted she was humiliated, the more she admitted she had been pursuing him. If her intentions were innocent, the reveal wouldn't have hurt. The fact that she was so angry proved she had been trying to seduce him. The narrative crumbled. People stopped commenting on her posts. They started asking her awkward questions she couldn't answer. Amidst this fallout, I met James. He was a lawyer, sharp, grounded, and completely unfazed by drama. I told him everything on our third date. The sabotage, Alex, the wine bottle. He didn't run. He laughed. "That is the most insane thing I have ever heard," he said, "and I handle criminal defense." When I finally introduced James to Patricia 6 months later, the dynamic had shifted permanently. She tried to pull her old tricks, the lingering hug, the wide eyes, but she was terrified. She knew that I knew. She knew that if she pushed too hard, the Alex story would be brought up again, and her victimhood would be shattered. James was also a master of the gray rock technique. When she tried to fish for compliments, he gave her polite, boring answers. When she tried to exclude me from the conversation, he firmly brought me back in. "That's interesting, Patricia," he would say. "Emma was just saying something similar the other day." He gave her nothing to feed on. We got married 3 years later. Patricia attended, wearing a dress that was arguably too white and too sparkly for a mother of the bride, but she behaved. She gave a speech that was mostly about herself, but she didn't object. During the reception, I saw her cornering one of Alex's friends. Alex was a bridesman, of course. "You simply must meet my niece," she was whispering. "She loves tall men." "Mom," I interrupted, gliding over. "It's a gay wedding party. They're all gay." "Well, you never know," she sniffed, turning away to find a new target.
James and I now have a 1-year-old daughter, Sophie. Patricia is obsessed with her, and honestly, it's perfect. A baby offers unconditional love and attention, which is exactly what a narcissist craves. She buys Sophie endless outfits and posts photos of Grandma's angel daily. She gets her fix, and she leaves my marriage alone. I didn't cure my mother. You cannot cure a personality disorder with a prank. But Alex's plan did something more important. It broke the cycle of fear. It showed me that her power over me was an illusion that could be shattered with a little creativity and a lot of nerve. She still believes she is the victim, and I let her believe it. I don't need her to admit she was wrong. I just need her to stay in her lane. And as I watch her cooing over my daughter, safely distracted and effectively neutralized, I know I won the war. If you've ever had to outsmart a toxic family member just to survive, you know the battle never really ends. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell for more stories of sweet revenge, family chaos, and the lengths we go to for peace. Like this video if you think Alex deserves a medal, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that they aren't alone.